The only thing that got me concerned was when I bent the spoon. It felt like putty.
Or people that were from a Christian tradition, they had the least amount of the psychic gene.
It was through reverse eugenics. The people were selected who had the ability, and they were killed by the Inquisition. But the future influences us too.
So you guys are developing this product that can develop certain abilities?
Eventually.
This is the Strange and Mysterious World podcast, in conjunction with Eleusis TV. These are your hosts, Lee Stridham and William Collinson.
If you love the subjects we explore on Strange and Mysterious World, then go deeper with Eleusis TV, a streaming platform dedicated to documentaries exploring consciousness, ancient wisdom, psychedelics, spirituality, and the mysteries of human experience. Visit eleusistv.com or click the link in the description.
Tonight's guest is a very special guest. He is one of the world's leading researchers exploring the science of consciousness and the extraordinary abilities of the human mind. Dr. Dean Radin is the chief scientist of the Institute of Noetic Sciences. For more than 30 years, he has been conducting groundbreaking research into consciousness, intuition, psychic phenomena, and the nature of reality. He is an author of 5 internationally best-selling books, including Real Magic and The Science of Magic. His research has been published in more than 175 peer-reviewed scientific papers. Whether you're a skeptic, a believer, or simply curious, Dr. Dean Radin has spent decades following the evidence wherever it leads. Can't wait to get him on.
Well, here he is. Okay,
Dean,
cool.
thank you for coming onto our podcast. It's really, really an honor to have you.
But after reading your book, I've been really scared of every thought I have in my head, because I realize how much it actually affects the. I mean, you've proven it to like the against chance by a million, trillion, bazillion, trillion, six sigma to whatever to one. How
but
your
keep
thoughts
in mind,
affect things.
keep in mind that the actual size of the effects is pretty small, right? So
Yes.
as best as what we can tell, we're pushing probabilities around to a limited extent. Some people who are highly talented or have an enormous amount of practice in magical arts, for example, they can get much bigger effects. But even that is pretty rare.
I know, but even a tiny little bit that still scares me, because I did this one thing with the dowsing sticks. I did this one course, and we would walk up to somebody, and you could test their aura, like how much the magnetic field or whatever, and it would go out. And then we would all like sit there and like think positive thoughts to this person, and then we would all measure it, and their field would grow so substantially wider. And then we would sit there and all like think of horrible thoughts to this person, and then walk with the dowsing sticks, and you would see their field had shrunk. So just thinking negative thoughts about something can affect them, and like as you say, it's on such a minute level, but it's still doing something. And that's why they say don't be careful what you wish for, because like if you are like really wanting someone to
It
have a
does
bad thing happen.
it creates a different sense of responsibility for our thoughts. And which is very similar in many ways to the idea of mindfulness meditation, simply being mindful about where your mind is. The only thing that got me concerned was when I bent the spoon, because then that was a macroscopic effect. And to this day, I don't know exactly how I did it. I have not been able to reproduce it. But the thing that I think is limiting from reproducing that effect is because it frightened me. Right? I don't like the idea that in the right or the wrong state of mind that you can do something at that magnitude.
Wow. Okay.
And that was a very interesting story. I don't know if could you share it with our listeners that haven't heard that story before.
Well, this was back in around 2000 when I was working in Silicon Valley at a place called Interval Research, which is funded by Paul Allen, the co-founder of Microsoft. And so I had a pretty big budget for my project, which is doing psi research in an industrial lab. And Russell Targ and Ed May were both on my project because I had enough money to pay them. So one day Russell comes in and he had gone to a spoon bending party, which you're probably familiar with. And Russell said that he had bent a rebar, which is, used in construction. These things are not designed to bend, but he bent it, and he showed it to me, and I thought, well, that's because you're extremely strong. And no, you have to be a muscle man to be able to bend a rebar, because this wasn't like a very long thing. Like if it was 6 feet long or something, maybe it'd be a little bendy.
Yeah.
No, it was maybe 2 feet or 2.5 feet long. It's very, very stiff. If you're extremely strong, you might be able to bend it a little bit, but he went and basically bent it a lot. And I asked him, well, with muscle, did you muscle it? And the answer is no. It just became soft and bent. So I was extremely skeptical. And of course, I had heard about people who had done strange things to spoons and forks. And I wasn't quite sure what to make of anything other than bending the neck of a spoon or a fork, because that's easy. So that you could easily do that and not even know that you're using strength. So I was only interested in cases where all of the tines of a fork became interleaved or like braided. That would be really difficult to do. Or to bend the bowl of a soup spoon in half, because both of those require an enormous amount of force. And if you muscle it with leverage, you can actually do that. I mean, if you put a lot of leverage on it, or you have a special kind of gizmo that stage magicians use. But to see somebody actually just go squish with a thumb and finger, that's not possible. And even Joe Rogan said that he couldn't do it. He could muscle it, but
he brought that spoon to he's brought the spoon and he tried, yeah.
So I was invited a little bit later that year to go to a different spoon bending party, and I was determined to see somebody up close actually do it, to bend the bowl of a soup spoon in half. And so I found somebody who claimed that they had done it, and I was mimicking what she was doing. She was holding the bowl with a thumb and a finger, and then holding the rest of the spoon with the other hand, and she wasn't able to do it, but somehow I managed to be able to do it. And I wasn't even aware that I was doing it until somebody said, look what you did. And I had bent it around 90 degrees, and they said, well, just keep going, because it felt like putty, as people describe at that point. It felt flexible. So I just squished it all the way over and immediately hardened up, and it remains that way today.
Wow.
That's incredible. But you know what really got me about that story was that you wanted that button. There was a button that she had.
Yes, I'll show you the button.
And you were so, like, something got into you that you just wanted that button. It says, so people that are listening, it says certified warm former.
Yeah.
So she said, if you could bend the spoon, you get the button. And you just wanted that button so much for some reason. And you got that spoon, and because of your obsession with that button, like it activated your whatever your thing is. But what really interested me, Dean, was that firstly I was wondering, what was that obsession that got into your head? Like, you are like the leading researcher in parapsychology and this kind of subject. But I wanted to ask you, like, do you think it was some kind of like thing from the other side? Like I know sometimes they say in some spiritual traditions that if you become very clairvoyant and sensitive, you'll actually realize how much of the other side beyond the veil is actually influencing you, like spiritual beings and stuff like that. And I just thought, because you're leading paranormal, like, because of your work and so influential on this subject, was there some kind of influence from the other side that helped you to bend that spoon so you could come and tell us the story and write about it in your books and help you with your research?
Well, maybe that wasn't my experience. I mean, if there are influences that are normally invisible, I'm not sensitive to such things. I don't see spirits or anything like that. So maybe there was an influence, but my internal experience of it was that this was something that I needed to happen. in a way that is rare for me. Like I would normally am quite analytical and will think about how do I make this happen? What do I need to do something? In this case, it was a kind of a crazy obsession, which fits in though with especially with the magical traditions where motivation is extremely important. And so if you can push motivation I mean, the way I describe it in my book was that there's two ways of getting into the state of gnosis that magicians talk about, this altered state of awareness. One is a calm state, super calm, like meditation. But the other one is what I call screaming at fire, which is extremely energetic state. And so that's the state that I was in. I don't know why I got into that state, but I was in that state where at an extreme level of emotion that I needed to have this button. And the image that came to mind was I'm on the stage the next day and I'm wearing my suit and I have the button on the suit. So it's a dark suit, so it would show up very clearly. And I knew that most of the people at this spoon bending party would be at that talk. And so they would see that button and it's like the badge of honor that I can do this.
Wow.
Again, I'm not a person who is into self-aggrandizing, right? I'm not even ego-driven that much, but for whatever reason, that's what happened.
But you know what's interesting is that because you had that image of the future, like I mean, this is on all like sports sciences when they say if you want to win the trophy, you've got to imagine it happening, or like if you swing the golf stick, you got to imagine the ball going in the hole. That's like, and it's also through this whole manifestation thing with all over the internet now. Is you got to imagine the future like you're in it and like and feel it, and then so you basically did that. And it worked. So that's incredible.
It's true. I had a very strong image of wearing the button on the stage, and then that may have turned into, well, I have to get the button. In order for that to be true, I must be able to do this. And so it closed the causal loop in a sense. Right. So I had this future thing that I had to close, or it had to be closed, whether it was me that was doing it or something else. I don't know.
But do you think like negative emotions can also, like I know when they say the manifestation thing, I don't know if you've seen this in your research as well. Like if they say you've got to have a sense of gratitude and love and complete calm and be a gnosis, like you said, in a state of that. But also, like also in your book, when you talk about charging sigils, you got to like draw the sigil and then you got to like make sure you know what you want, but then emotionally put like a lot of emotion in it. But then I was thinking like, and also in Bill Bengstein's book, and I know we actually just interviewed Margaret on the show, and
she said
also
hello.
we spoke about, she says hi.
She said hello. She will say hello to you.
But he says you should do the image cycling even when you're in a bad mood. But what I'm trying to get at is that there's that saying that says worrying about something is like praying for something you don't want. And what I've also noticed is that like if people are so worried about something, it like happens to them. I'll give you an example from my own life is that my ex-girlfriend, my daughter's mother, she was so worried about her luggage, her hand luggage in a plane, like above you. She was so pedantic about it being stolen. But the thing is, I've never ever heard a story ever in my whole life of someone's hand luggage in the plane above you getting stolen. I've never heard of that. It's never a thing. I don't know. But she was, for some reason, always so pedantic. She would even lock it, always worried about it. And the one day, it got stolen. And she actually saw the guy walking out of the plane with it, and she was running out. She got the bag back, and the guy ran. But I was just like, what? The person has worried so much about that, it happened to them.
Yeah. So then it raises the question of, is it simply a passive precognition, or is it an active thing that you are manifesting? And as I talk about in the book, that it's usually not possible to know, that it is some kind of reverberation set up between the thing that you're envisioning and the thing that you want. And if they both come together in just the right way, then it must happen. It has to happen. So
Wow.
that's, I think, where a lot of magical effects occur.
Wow, I didn't even think of that it might have been a precognition. And then that's why she was so paranoid.
Yeah, sure.
Wow.
I'm sorry, William. I'm not sure I'm sure you've heard of Greg Radin. I've listened to a couple of his stuff, and it's also very interesting. And something very similar to what he mentioned as well, what you're saying, is with the whole, because he's involved in that heart science, that math, what's it, heart math science institute or whatever,
yes.
where they kind of try and match up, they try and sync the heart and the brain, or the mind or the brain together. But exactly what you mentioned there earlier, he said the same thing, and it's when you are trying to get something or you're needing something, you have to imagine, and he mentions the Bible, Jesus talks about this quite often, you've got to imagine that it's already happened. So you've got to have the feeling and the imagination. And I think this is where your story world comes in as well, because your ex is so involved with this thing getting stolen. It's actually, she's manifested this whole thing because she's now living it. She's living that thing that is getting stolen. So it did eventually, because that's what manifested eventually. So that's my opinion. That's kind of just what I've been hearing from, and also from your work as well, Dean. So yeah, that's kind of my pickup from
regarding the spoon bending episode, I was reminded afterwards, after the book was written, and I think because one of my friends saw me talk about it on the Joe Rogan show, she said, do you recall that I was standing next to you, this lady, and that there was another lady standing on the other side? So these two ladies are standing on either side, both of whom are known for being highly psychic. One of whom is actually was given an honorary membership in Mongolian shamanism. I think the only woman ever given that honor, because she's basically an American shaman. And so they were helping me do this.
Oh, so they were your batteries.
I didn't remember that at all until she reminded me. And then I thought, oh, yeah, now I do remember. It was these two ladies, Fran and Gail, on either side of me, who were doing whatever they do to help somebody, and I did it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, you hear that a lot in even with Reiki and stuff. You can use people for like batteries, or like even in Bill Bankston's thing, when he was with Ben, when he met Ben, and Ben was the actual main healer. He was like the guy that in the room would actually charge Ben when he did the healing.
Yeah,
so that's
and
fascinating.
Of course, long folklore and legends about being gifted with an ability, right? Sometimes it's from the master to the student before the master passes away, something like that. Something is given.
Yes, a Shaktipat.
Shaktipat, providing Kundalini experience, all of those kinds of stories are kind of along these lines, that some ability is woken up. Not necessarily that you didn't have it before, but you may not have realized that you didn't have it. And so you can be woken up by somebody who has that ability. You can hear my voice is beginning to go away now because there's too much smoke.
Shame, sorry.
Sorry, talking about abilities there. Sorry, man. Cut you off. I did hear you were chatting a little bit about, on the Joe Rogan thing, about DNA. So do you think certain people have got the DNA that is kind of carried through the generations that allows for it, and others don't? Or do you think everybody has it, just some have it stronger than others?
Well, there is always a genetic component to talent, any kind of talent. Some people name any talent at all. There will be people who will be really, really good at something and others not so good. So the estimates I've seen are somewhere around 25% of a talent as a genetic basis. In some other areas, like in sports and music, it could be 80%. It's a huge amount of the ability is related to your genetic makeup, which is normally the way that your brain and body are constructed, just the proteins that construct the body. When it comes to more subtle effects, including things like intelligence, like the type of intelligence. So there's the two general classes are called crystalline intelligence and fluid intelligence, which are more or less along the lines you would think. So a crystalline intelligence is somebody who's extremely good analytically, like a mathematician perhaps. And fluid intelligence is somebody who has a super creative ability. So they're both variations on intelligence or ability to do stuff with your mind. So I think psychic perception, psychic receptivity is related to something like that. So that's now a combination of the exome sequence, which is the protein part of the DNA. It creates the body itself. But then a whole bunch of it is also the non-coding portion of DNA, which is the much larger, it's 95% of DNA. So the non-coding part is interesting because that's the part that is essentially turning genes on and off. And so in our two studies we've done so far, it looks like there may be some portions which are coding, which are creating different bodily structures, but a lot of it is probably more related to non-coding. And that says, yeah, most people probably have the ability, if they turn those portions of DNA on, if you get switched on, then you will be better at these kinds of things than you would otherwise, which means, okay, meditate and practice. And that will begin to turn on aspects of our genetics that will allow us to be more adept at any kind of psychic effect.
All right, then let me ask you another question then, with regards to that, but more on past lives. So do you think it's possible, because your DNA can carry memory and all sorts of stuff, do you think it's possible that when people are seeing past lives, it's actually not their own spiritual journey that they've had, but possibly memories that have been carried forward from ancestors? They're seeing something that's happened, because obviously it's all come through genetics now, and genetics has got some sort of memory to it. But we're not seeing the memories of people that were our ancestors, and it's because we've got the genes. Just a thought. I don't know. I'm asking.
Memory of the genes.
There is almost certainly is some memory that's encoded in the genetics, whether it's this is part of the issue of nature versus nurture, right? So the nature part is your genetic makeup, and the nurture is how you are brought up. And so it raises yet another question on, I was just discussing this yesterday with a colleague, that somebody at some point is going to ask me, what do I think about spirits and survival after death and all that stuff? And my answer to that is, well, I don't have any personal experience with seeing or spirits or non-human intelligence or anything like that, so I don't know. As far as the survival issue, whether it's reincarnation or some other form of survival, I'm agnostic there too. And I know that literature as well as anybody does. I'm agnostic because I can't get beyond the notion that all of that evidence is based on psi in the living. We don't have any independent evidence of psi in the dead, in which case, well, we don't know, right? We know that through psychic means, a medium could get all of the information that the medium is going to get. And it's somewhere between clairvoyance and telepathy, you can get all of it. So why do you need to propose the idea that there's some independent entity? And so my mind has changed a little bit towards the direction that there's something else going on. And it's primarily pushed by not so much near-death experience, because that could also be a matter of clairvoyance, essentially, but rather about terminal lucidity. So these are the cases in the brain where somebody has severe Alzheimer's or has been in coma and hasn't spoken or recognized anybody, sometimes for years. And then perhaps a day before they die, they suddenly become lucid. So otherwise, that's why it's called terminal lucidity. It's terminal because the person's about to die, but they suddenly become lucid. They remember everything. They talk to people and they haven't talked for years sometimes. And it seems like they're perfectly fine. Well, how did that happen? Like, the brain is damaged at that point. The portions of the brain that hold memory does not work anymore. So how could they even articulate anything, to say nothing of remembering it? How could they talk about it? That is a major mystery now. So we were talking about that and trying to figure out, well, how do we even begin to understand something like that? And so the idea I had, which is if you go back to the esoteric traditions, both Eastern and Western, it's called the perennial philosophy. That philosophy basically says everything starts with consciousness. In fact, it's more fundamental than the physical world itself. All there is consciousness. So how do you get from consciousness into the physical world? Like, how do you get from something which apparently is not physical into physicality? The esoteric traditions, all of them, give ideas about that. And the easy way to describe it is through phase changes. And so we know that if you can have a gas, a liquid, and a solid out of water, which are all exactly the same thing in different forms. And there's a way that they transition from one form to the other. Well, imagine then that consciousness is kind of like a gas. Usually it's invisible, it's like everywhere, permeates everything, but it can, through phase transitions, keep stepping down into liquid and then solid form, in which case the esoteric traditions pretty much universally say that the physical world is essentially pure awareness that has been stepped down through phase transitions, just like water, into a highly dense form. And that dense form is the physical world as we experience it. What that immediately raises is the possibility that we have a physical form, we have causal bodies and astral bodies, and all of these ideas that are also part of the metaphysical traditions, that we have multiple bodies, which would mean that your brain has a subtle brain too, because it keeps going out. Well, the subtle brain might actually store memories in the same way that the physical brain does. So if the physical brain doesn't work in somebody anymore because they have Alzheimer's, there might be echoes of that still in a subtle brain. And so when they're beginning to lose their body, the body's falling apart, they may actually be more in the subtle body than the physical body, and that's where the memories are coming from. That's also where the instructions come from on how to articulate and interact with people. So that kind of makes sense to me now, of a way of thinking about survival, that it is not as though you have a physical body and then suddenly you're into some sort of spirit world, whatever that means, but that there's multiple levels of which you'd have to pass through, because it is all one thing. It's all part of consciousness, but it exists in many different forms, exactly in the same way that water exists in multiple forms. So that's appealing to me.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
That was amazing, Dean. So just on that DNA thing now, what I found so fascinating was you said that in your research of actually doing genome sequencing and seeing if this psychic gene is the thing, you found out that mainly the Christian countries that were, or people that were from a Christian tradition, they had the least amount of the psychic gene.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can explain that. That was fascinating.
Yeah,
Your
well,
findings.
we thought that people who said that they were psychic and come from psychic families would have a genetic mutation, probably in their exome, in the coding portion of the DNA. And the reason was, we figured, well, maybe their brains are wired differently. And that's why they're able to get this. And that would be passed down through generations. But what we found is that the psychics from psychic families were what a geneticist would call the wild type. That's the average person. We're all wild types, and we don't have many mutations, although everyone does have some mutation, but at least not that one. But what we found that was surprising is that the controls that we found, who were the matched people by age and gender and race, they ended up with a mutation in the intron sequence. And again, the intron sequence are these switches that turn genes on and off. Well, their intron sequence had a mutation which apparently had turned off something because they had no psychic ability at all, and nobody in their family did either. So that's where one of our co-authors who looked at the genetics of societies, both contemporary and going backwards in time, of which we know a fair amount now, discovered that it's basically the Holy Roman Empire and surrounding worlds, which were Christianity and its origins, they had that similar kind of intron sequence. And so the implication of it was, well, why would that particular society of people have this? Where did this mutation come from? And our only guess basically was that it was through reverse eugenics. The people were selected who had the ability, and they were killed by the Inquisition. And so all the people left over from that would not have that ability. And so that particular mutation would then start going through generations. And so some of that, I suppose, makes sense. I mean, it's a way of thinking about how after hundreds of years of getting rid of people who would be seen as witches, well, what would that do? Well, it would do exactly what we had seen, that you'd end up with a whole society that has a particular mutation in it. And in this case, probably not the exome, like they still can have these abilities. And of course, many people in figure today, Rome, plus or minus a couple of countries, to say nothing of Christians everywhere else in the world. But people who come from that lineage have the same amount of psychic abilities as anyone else, but maybe a tiny bit less. And so as best as I know, we've never done an analysis of actual performance in different societies. What has been done are questionnaires about experiences, and there are some variations across cultures. And as best as I can tell, if you just take Italy as an example, the general population reports about the same amount of abilities, or at least of experiences, as everyone else. So whatever this genetic effect is, it doesn't seem to have lasted for very long, even though we do see the difference in an intron sequence. Also, keep in mind, this was a very, very small experiment. We ended up with 13 people in the case studies who were the psychics, and only 10 in the controls. So when you do a case control study in genetics, generally you're working with thousands of people and thousands of people from all over the place. So if you're interested in the genetics of schizophrenia, for example, you would have at least 10,000 cases and controls. That's how they find, and that's how they know what the genetic basis of schizophrenia is. Because anecdotally, people knew that it would run in families. Well, now we know why, because we know what the genes are. So we're at the very beginning stages of figuring this out. And that's why I said, Joe asked, well, what do you need to do to figure this out to a much higher degree? Well, we need thousands of cases, but it costs at least $10 million to do that. Mm. So he asked Elon, his buddy Elon Musk, to give him, give these guys $10 million. We haven't heard from Elon yet, so I don't know if he cares.
Come on, Elon.
No, he's a South African, so let's ask him. Come on.
Yeah.
He's in our DNA. Send him a signal. Sorry, Lee, what did you want to ask something?
No, there was something I was going to ask now. It's completely blown past my mind. It had something to do with the DNA as well. And magic. Okay, I'll come back to it when it pops back into my mind. I'll remember.
Dean, you were talking about the precognition there earlier on about the suitcase and all that. What I found so fascinating is you did studies on retrocognition, which is like you can affect the past from the present. And
sort of. When we talk about retrocausation, people would say, you mean you're changing the past? And the answer is no. We are affecting the past event as it was unfolding at the time. So that's quite different than changing the past. We're affecting, and this comes from basic physics, that the present moment is largely influenced by the past, but it's also influenced by the future. So things happening right now in our present are to a large extent influenced by past, the past bringing to this moment, but it's also influenced by future events.
Jeez, I mean, the thing is, I read it in your book, and it was so fascinating, but I couldn't understand it. I don't know. Is there some way you could explain it to like a 12-year-old?
Well, it depends on what you think the present moment is, right? We usually we don't think very much about what does it mean that in the present moment. Like it is what it is, right? It's now. But at least from a physics perspective, the equations of how things happen in the physical world are time symmetric. That means that the past influences us, but the future influences us too. We know that at the quantum level, that is happening all the time. That's what happens at that level. The question is, does it happen at the level of the macroscopic world, which is the world that we experience? And it looks like the answer there is yes, to some extent. We are also being influenced by future events. So since this is most easily seen in experiments that use random number generators as a physical event happening in real time, because as I explained, that you can take data from a true random number generator that no one has observed the result yet. You record it, but no one knows what the output is. And then sometime later, you play it back. So it looks like it's real time, but it isn't. It's just playing back a recording. But at that time, you give somebody the instruction to make more 1 bits occur or more 0 bits occur. And it'll look exactly the same way as though you're doing the experiment in real time, except it's with pre-recorded data. But you become the first observer. You're the first person to actually see the data that was recorded, but no one else had seen it before. There's something then about the observation of a past event, which from a quantum perspective is still in a superposition. It hasn't collapsed yet into the everyday world. It's residing in a superposition of all possible states. So observation is then said, well, it looks like there's something about conscious observation that causes the superposition to collapse into what we see in the classical world, the everyday world. And so many experiments have been done on that, and I've finished one recently, and it shows very clearly that some kind of events are very susceptible to this sort of retrocausal influence. And again, it's not that the past is being changed from what it was. It is being influenced when it was being recorded. But nobody knew that because by definition, it cannot be observed before you do the experiment. So the first person observing it is somehow making it be that way in the past. And so I talked about that in the book because it's a way of thinking about how do magical effects work? Because most magical effects look like and feel like synchronicities. Like a whole bunch of weird stuff happens at just exactly the right time and place in order for your wish to manifest. Well, if you look at all of the various steps involved in getting some kind of a magical effect to work, in magic, you're not even supposed to dwell on that. Like you don't think about that at all. You're thinking about how I want this particular outcome. I don't care how it happens. I don't care what the sequence is. I just want that thing. That makes the effect much more likely to actually occur because now you're not trying to push the world into the direction that you want. You're sort of pulling it from the future into the place that you want, but giving a huge range of possibilities that can somehow arrange themselves so that it will occur. I mean, I can explain that in the book. So that's why I was talking about a retrocausal effects, because again, we know what happens in physics at very small levels, quantum world. It appears to also happen at the human scale. And then that provides a viable way of thinking about why would any kind of magical effect or synchronistic effect work. That's why I talked about that strange synchronicity that happened in my own experience with the Boundary Institute. Do you remember that
Yes,
episode from the book?
the boundary episode. I mean, because I think you've also discussed it in a previous book as well. I remember
Yes.
there's the one where the guy was doing an yoga nidra.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
but that's what I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you, did you do yoga nidra to get onto the Joe Rogan show?
No, that was more of a magical mystery thing. I know somebody who's a publicist who said that he was working on it, but then the notice I got was from my publicist at the publisher, um, and so she got an inquiry. So
Okay.
that show, as you can imagine, most of the shows that are very, very popular, you can't ask to be on that show. I mean, you could ask, but they're not
Yeah.
going to pay any attention to it. They
Yeah.
need to get somebody else who is a professional to have already vetted the person and
Yes.
know that they can talk and stuff. And then it comes through that direction, and then they do their own checking, and then if they think that's a good guest, they'll contact you.
Anyway,
Well,
for years,
what's the
I've
synchronicity?
always, no,
I
yeah,
want to
sorry,
know
I
what the
wanted to
synchronicity.
say,
You got
no,
to post
we'll
the
get to
story.
that.
What happened?
No, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there, Lee. I just want to say, Dean, that I've always wondered for many years. Every time I listen to the Joe Rogan thing, I was always wondering when is Dean gonna be on there. So, I mean, I think it was just a matter of time anyway. But yes,
Yep.
tell us about the yoga nidra thing. That was the story. It's so amazing.
Well, so I mentioned this story in the book, and I mentioned it in the Joe Rogan show because it is, other than the spoon bending, the closest to actual magic I think that I've experienced, and that's why I've written 2 books now on magic, because it's so far beyond the sort of things that we see that are psychic in the laboratory that it really makes you stop and wonder what in the world is going on here. So the story, it's a 4-part synchronicity. And the synchronicities are coincidences, but of course that have meaning attached to it. So this is back in, when is this? 2000 again? It's in 2000. My appointment at Interval Research had ended at that point because it was only a 10-year experiment that was funded by Paul Allen, and the experiment ended in 2000. So a couple of colleagues and I got together and we decided to create a thing called Boundary Institute, which is the boundaries between mind and matter. And we needed a place for the office in Silicon Valley. This was during the .com craze. And so it was very difficult to find an office space in the Valley. So we went out to a suburb called Los Altos to an office park, and we found a suitable place. So we got that place, and it was at the edge of the office park. So generally you would park your car out on the edge and you could walk right to our place, which is right next to the parking lot. But at that time also we had just moved to a place where I could walk to work. If you walked there, you would not go through the parking lot, you would go through the rest of the office park. So one day I'm walking through the office park, just looking around at what other people do there, things like a dentist office and a real estate office and things like that. And I go past one and it catches my eye, a little sign that says PsyQuest Inc., PSI Quest Incorporated. I thought, well, that's a coincidence because we're doing psi research, even though we're called Boundary Institute, and there's some place called PsyQuest. Well, what is that? Well, I look in there, there's nobody in there, so I don't know what that is. So I tell the others in our group, and of course they all think it's a funny coincidence too. So another week or so goes by, and I'm now walking towards our office from a direction that I didn't normally go. And again, my eye is caught by a little tiny sign in the office next to ours, which says PsyQuest Labs. And so now we're thinking, well, that's not a coincidence anymore, because we're doing PsyQuest, we're doing a PsyQuest in a laboratory, and right next to us is a little sign that says PsyQuest, but our sign says Boundary Institute. It doesn't say anything about who we are or what we're doing.
Yeah.
So now I get interested and say, well, I need to meet who this person is who the people are. There's nobody in there either. So every day now for the next week or two, I walk past this place And they have mini blinds, which are usually closed, but you can just look right through the mini blind a little bit. And one day I noticed there's somebody there. So I knock on the door and I'm going to introduce myself. The door opens and I say, hello, I'm your neighbor, and he interrupts because I thought for a minute that he was going to have a stroke because he looked shocked. And he said, Dean Radin? And so I was perplexed. Yes, that's my name. Who are you? Like, what are you doing here? And also thinking, how do you know who I am? Well, so it turns out that, so I asked him then, what do you do here? His answer was, I'm doing what you're doing. After he had recovered, because he really couldn't talk for a couple of moments. That's why I was kind of concerned that he was going to fall over. So what do you think we're doing? Well, I'm doing cyber search, like you are. And so, what? Like you're actually this PsyQuest Laboratories and PsyQuest Inc. is a Psy research group? Well, we knew everybody in the world that's doing this. And we had never heard of this place or this person. And so the reason he was so shocked is because he had been doing a yoga nidra magical practice. It's yoga nidra because of the style of the meditation, but it's a magical version of yoga nidra where you have an intention and you want that to occur. Well, it's manifestation essentially. So he was sleeping for 3 hours and then being awake for 3 hours while holding the intention of what he wanted. And he did this over 24 hours in a row. And so what did he want? He wanted me to show up because he wanted me to be on his board of directors for his company. He had no idea where I was because very few people actually knew I was in Silicon Valley in the first place. And nobody other than the other people in our team and their spouses knew where our offices were. We didn't tell anyone. So when I opened the door and I'm there and he had been manifesting me so that he could find me, you can see how shocked he was.
Yeah.
So that was the third synchronicity. The fourth one is, I said, well, he said, do you want to see what I'm doing? Yes, I would like to see what you're doing. So he takes me into the back room and there's a shielded room, like a Faraday cage, but a very fancy professional one. And inside it, there's a whole bunch of equipment, a special kind of what's called a 0G chair, a kind of chair you sit on and kind of tilts backwards, and a whole bunch of physiology equipment, a whole bunch of other stuff. And at this point now, I'm in danger of falling over because what I had been doing in my office, which is adjacent wall, the same wall, on the other side of the wall is his lab. On the other side is my office that I had selected within our offices for the Boundary Institute. And my office is the only one that has furniture in it yet because it's still new and we're buying stuff to fill it up. So there's my desk and I put a whiteboard on that wall. And what I had been doing when I would go into the office was drawing a laboratory that I wanted to get, which was a shielded room with that kind of chair, with that kind of equipment, which we were going to put in one of our offices. Of course, I had no idea that it was on the other side of the wall, but it was. So I was doing a magical act to draw the equipment, literally drawing on the board, but also magically drawing into manifesting the equipment that I needed, which would have been in arm's reach if I had been able to reach through the wall. So you have two things happening at the same time. One person is drawing me into their orbit, like almost literally, and I'm drawing his stuff into my orbit. So two intentions are both simultaneously doing the same thing. And it's difficult to think of this as anything other than a kind of gravity effect. You know, two things are sort of spinning around. The gravity is pulling us literally together. So that was in the end of this synchronistic event, a whole sequence of them in events. And that's what got me thinking then, well, how could you explain this from a psychokinetic effect, which normally we think of as I'm like pushing into the future to give me the thing that I want, which makes no sense in this case. because nobody knew we were there. Nobody knew what we were doing. We had no idea this guy existed. There were so many things that had to come together just the right way that it makes more sense to think of it as a combination of a forward push, like the way manifestation is usually thought about. You're pushing something into being in the future, combined with a retrocausal effect, because so many things had to be arranged in the past in order for this future to manifest. That's why I started thinking this feels like magic. For this level of synchronicity to occur again and again and again, that it took a couple of years later before my first book on magic, but that's why I became interested in it.
Yeah, well, it certainly was magic. I mean, geez, I mean, it can't get more magical than that, Dean. That's for sure. I mean, it was, but
I think
sorry, Lee, go for it.
I think I experience synchronicities a lot, and it's because I'm aware of it. I think a lot of people, they experience it, but they're not aware of it. They don't kind of almost catch that they've been thinking about it, or it's like it's almost in the back of their mind that it's forgotten. Something happens and they don't acknowledge. But I always, when something happens, I always think to myself, geez, okay, I was thinking about this yesterday, or this happened last week, and all of a sudden this is where we are now. So I'm always ready to catch those things, and maybe the awareness is actually there. But I think that actually happens not to your extent, where that was like heavily synchronized, but I think these little synchronicities that happen throughout people's lives daily, I think it's always there. But people just need to kind of open up a little bit and just recognize and see what it's all about. Sorry, well, you can carry on there.
Yeah, I actually agree, because one of the first things you notice when we've done surveys with people who begin to meditate, and we've asked what kind of experiences have you had as a result of the meditation, the very first one that always shows up is people become aware of synchronicities.
Mm.
So you're right, they probably are occurring all the time. And again, it raises the question of, well, how is it happening? It is probably a reverberation between things from the past and things from the future. It's like it's arranging itself. And the more you become aware of that, the more you see that, again, most of the time we're being influenced by the past, but not always. Sometimes we're getting influences from the future, and the way it manifests in our experience is a synchronicity, like a strange coincidence that's meaningful in some way.
Well, yeah,
I've actually given up on coincidences. I don't believe in coincidences anymore. It's now just synchronicity.
But I'll tell you a few interesting coincidences about.
Just say there's no coincidence.
I mean, synchronicities. Sorry, synchronicities. so Dean. Well, firstly, we were season 6 of this podcast. We were like saying we're going to talk about more magical things. You know, Agrippa and Golden Dawn. We're going to get some people to talk about that, and then we're the show. This new season comes out, and there you are on Joe Rogan, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Dean, and his book. It's called the Science of Magic. Like, we have to have him on. And then, so I'm busy reading your book, and I'm reading, and I look out the window, and this truck comes past, like full of bananas and like banana boxes. And I'm like looking at these boxes, and I'm reading the word banana, and I'm thinking, I wonder why they put 2 nanas, why they put another na in banana. Like, why couldn't they just be banan? Why does it have to be banana? Because now it like sounds like a kid's word, like banana. And I'm like pondering this, and then I go back to the book, and I'm reading, and like the next like paragraph, you say, because it was the section about remote viewing, you say, yeah, in remote viewing, most people, when they think of the image of yellow that comes up, they immediately think banana. And I was like, no way, that is just insane. Yeah. And then I got to the chapter where you said about the horse. You said try manifestation techniques of an animal. Like, think of an animal you want to see in the future. So, and it was like 2 months ago I read the book, so I can't remember exactly the procedure. Maybe you can give more detail on that. But so I thought, okay, a white horse. I'm going to do a white horse, because I couldn't think of the last time I saw a white horse, and I was like, I can't actually think ever when I saw a white horse. So I thought, okay, a white horse, I'll give that a go. So I'm driving to work, and the funny thing is that I stopped at a traffic light. So we call them robots inside, but we stopped at the traffic light, and I thought, for some reason, I was like, I wonder if I'm going to see this white horse. And I'm like, I looked up and there was this massive sign on the side of these a complex of houses. And it was like advertising the houses. And I was like looking and I was like, oh, I wonder how much these houses are. And then I looked down and it said the houses complex was called Polo Fields. And there was a picture of a guy riding a white horse underneath. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Couldn't believe it. I was because it was so interesting that I thought of that at the traffic light, and it was I just read it before going to work. So I was like, that was a profound moment.
Yeah, I actually open my book by talking about a similar synchronicity where I'm writing about magic. I look out the window and I see a truck that has the word magic on it because it's a plumbing company called Magic.
Exactly, and I don't even think of that until now. You told me. Yeah.
And it's partially because I live in the state of Idaho, which is it's a mountainous area, and the cities tended to develop in valleys because there would be water in the valley. So our valley is called Treasure Valley. The next valley over is called Magic Valley. So the truck that is the Magic plumbing people probably got their name from the Magic Valley. So
that's amazing.
Yeah,
I love that. And so have you listened to the telepathy tapes?
Yes, I'm on episode 6 of the first version of those tapes. Yes.
So I mean that's quite profound about the non-verbal kids that have these incredible psi abilities. Have you ever done any experiments with like, or have you seen anything like that yourself? With these
I have not.
kids?
No. We have discussed it at work as to whether or not we want to see if we can replicate these effects. And anytime we do an experiment, we need to get ethics approval from our institutional review board, because any experiment involving human subjects has to have ethics approval. And it's very difficult. It's difficult to get approval if you have children or people who cannot give their own informed consent. You need guardians, basically, to do that, and usually would only get permission under very unusual circumstances. So we decided, having been the chair of our ethics board, and now I'm vice chair, we decided it would be too difficult to do this. To say nothing of, we're dealing with people who are nonverbal, which means that they need to work with somebody else, their handler, their teacher, their parent or something. And they can't do something in the laboratory in the usual way. So I'm glad, though, that I have colleagues who have since found ways of working with some of these people in ways that are pretty well controlled. Because if the telepathy tapes themselves, a skeptic would look at that and say, well, that's ridiculous, because if you're the assisted spelling technique is so open to all kinds of cueing that if the mother is helping the person spell and the mother knows what the answer is, well, then that's not a viable experiment. And at least within the way that the telepathy tapes were described and a few of the videos that were available, a skeptic would look at that and say it's ridiculous. That this is nonsense.
But the thing is that the handler or the mother wouldn't know, like the things that they're talking about that those kids know. I mean, the mother, I mean, even if the mother, if it was coming from the mother, it's still so profound because for this kid psychic or the mother, I mean, it's so profound. It's so profound.
The anecdotes are impressive. But of course, from a scientific perspective, you want to take the next step and say, well, maybe the kid has mentioned 1,000 things and the mother's only remembering one, and it was a coincidence. So that's why you need to do it under controlled conditions where you're able to tell, is this actually coincidence or something that's more than coincidence? So one of the tests that one of my colleagues did was they found two, among other things, these, say, neurodivergent people claim to be in contact with each other. So they got two of them who were in contact with each other. They, with their handlers, were put into separate rooms. One is shown a picture, and then the other one has to describe it. So if the two people are actually in connection, in communication with each other, then under blind conditions where the receiving party does not know, even the handler does not know what's being sent, if that can be described in detail, then either the neurodivergent person or the mother or handler is telepathic because they're getting the information correctly. So those have been done. Those kinds of tests have been done, apparently with very high accuracy, not as high as the 95 or 99% accuracy that the telepathy tapes talk about. But I've been told that that will show up in the documentary that they're making, which will show up on one of the streaming services, and probably beginning of next year. So we'll be able to see those as they unfolded, and that then becomes that's then a level of credibility that otherwise the stories are not anywhere near as good.
Yeah, well, I mean that documentary is gonna. I can't wait for that because it's really going to be a push and our like a thumbs up to us, you know. And
is there a shortcut? Is there a shortcut in? Is there a shortcut to open up your ability?
Yeah.
Besides sitting there for months and
CRISPR,
meditation, psychedelics, dreaming. Anything which is not an ordinary state of awareness. Yes.
And also CRISPR, because now we can inject the gene into us.
Well,
you don't
want to do it with CRISPR because that's a permanent change. You'd want to do it with an RNA edit, which is what my company is doing, because then it's temporary. We're not putting anything foreign. There's no foreign protein going into the body. It's using a method to tune down an existing protein in the body. In this case, happened to be a brain receptor. So there's no immune response. It's just telling your body to stop creating this particular protein for a while. And so how long is a while? Well, CRISPR would be permanent. One form of RNA would probably last for many, many months, 6 to 9 months. And the form that we're using now would probably last for maybe a month or two, maybe 2 months. We don't know exactly yet. But
yours is an inhaler.
It's a nasal delivery. Yeah. Inhale would imply through into the lungs. This is shot up the nose. So it gets into the brain.
So sorry, I missed something there. So you guys are developing this product that can prevent a certain protein from being developed that will assist you to develop certain abilities. Is that right? Am I getting that right?
Eventually, but that's pretty far in our future because we don't know what receptors to modulate at this point. You could the brain is awash in various kinds of neurochemicals, right? Mm-hmm. So serotonin, dopamine, and so on, lots of chemicals. That's what your brain is running on. There's electrical stuff, but it's electrochemical. Well, the chemical is the neurotransmitters. So our treatment at this point, the purpose of the company is to find a way to treat dementia. Well, dementia occurs because memories are encoded, short-term memories are encoded in the hippocampus region of the brain in communication with the frontal lobe. So the frontal lobe and these deep areas in the back and the hippocampus, if something disrupts that, you can no longer encode memory. So that's what dementia is. And there's something like 7 or 8 different kinds of dementia, one of which is Alzheimer's. But they all have the same problem in that there's a disruption in the ability to encode memory because the 5-HT2A receptor, which is a serotonin receptor, becomes hyperactive. And so you need a certain degree of coherence in the way that the brain is working in order for things to work properly. If it gets inflamed and becomes hyperactive, that coherence is lost. And that's why you can't code memory anymore. So we did tests where our hypothesis was that if you can downregulate the inflammation and stop this hyperactivity, well, then you'd be able to code memory again. That was the idea. Well, we tested it in mice and then rats and now in monkeys. And so we know it works. So we get a significant improvement in memory. So it would be a treatment for everything from early onset Alzheimer's to all of the other different forms of dementia to help people regain their memory, because it's calming down this hyperactivity in the brain. And as an intranasal delivery method, it means you don't need shots. You don't need to do what is currently being done, which is a 6-inch needle directly into your brain.
Jesus.
That's how genetic treatments are being done now for serious brain disease. So our method is much, much simpler and would allow a patient to essentially dose themselves. We probably wouldn't do that initially, but they would go to a clinic or something, and then you would dose it, and it would last for a couple of months. Somebody who's facing dementia or has dementia would do that in a second.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, geez, that's incredible, Dean. It actually reminds me of that movie. What's that movie with that they take that pill and he becomes extremely smart? What is it called?
Flowers for Algernon is the name of the original story. But
Hey,
yes,
is it? And they redid it with I mean, I can't even remember the actor now. But there was some
I
hectic
don't.
side effects at the end, but he became so clever that he figured out how to fix the side effects. I forgot what the
Right.
names. I don't know why I need this inhaler just so I can remember names and
Well, yeah. See,
movies.
everyone when they start getting older is starting to already find that sometimes you don't get the right words.
Yeah, geez,
That's
people's names and geez,
yeah.
books and
So we figure the worldwide market for memory treatments is gigantic. And so one of the reasons we did this is because there's a real need for it. So we're going to be solving a medical need, but it's also was a way for us to get the knowledge of how to do this when we actually did understand how to improve intuition and psychic ability and all that. So at some point, if this we want to sell our company for a huge amount of money, so that's big pharma can create this because it costs $1 billion from drug discovery to having something on the market. It's just enormously expensive all the way, and there's no way in the world we're going to be able to raise $1 billion to do this. That's what big pharma does.
Elon.
What we can do is
Really?
bring it up to the point where clinical trials begin. That's after we do all this preclinical stuff with animal testing, which we don't want to do, but we don't have any other alternative. That's what we have to do.
Yeah,
So we
sure.
get to the point where we can show this is working. We know it works in a primate. It'll probably work in humans. We'll get through phase 1 in clinical trials, which is safety. So people can take this and it'll safe for them. Whether it works or not is now phase 2, and then there's phase 3 and 4 and whatever. There's many phases that can go through. But we hope we are purchased by that time for enough money so we'll be able to do what we really wanted to do, which is to figure out not only how to enhance psychic ability, but how to enhance cognitive ability in general.
Wow. I mean, that does sound frightening though, because if someone uses that to gain power or whatever, because the thing is with the traditional techniques with yoga and all of the tantra and all of the older traditions, the thing is when people wanted to use it for power, they would start doing the practices, but then it would change their mind. They would become better people, and then their motivations would change. So they would probably get the cities eventually, but now they've actually become a better person, and they actually don't want to use it for power. They wanted to use it for healing and make the world a better place. So it's actually quite a good way to do it, is to go through that those routes. So what you explained just sounds like, I mean, if it gets into the wrong hands, it could be used quite bad, like for scary things.
Right. It raises all kinds of interesting ethical issues, not just for development of better psychic abilities, but of cognitive abilities in general. So it is not clear that you could, at this point, we don't know, can you increase intelligence? We don't know. Increasing cognitive ability, which could include intelligence, but is mostly about memory, cognition, ability to think, perception, all of those things that we associate with the mind in like an ordinary state, if all of that could be souped up a lot, that would probably help a lot of people as well. It would elevate humanity in a sense into a smarter version of ourselves, because it's quite true that one of the reasons why there's chronic war and all the rest of it is a lot of it is about greed. But it's also because, unfortunately, things like compassion and empathy are perceived as being weak. And ultimately,
So
as long as
terrible.
that happens, and you have people in charge of the military who want to change from defense into war, as we currently have in the United States, well, that only perpetuates the problem. And they do see compassion as weak. So I
So
keep
it's
thinking,
terrible.
well, don't they understand there's also there's two forms of influence. One is you bash somebody over the head, and the other one is you get them to collaborate with you. Soft power. There's the hard power and soft power. Soft power is way more efficient. It's much less expensive. In the long run, it's much better for everyone. And even thinking of it as power is probably not even necessary. It's simply a matter of having compassion for other people.
It
Yeah,
will,
sure.
it will cause cohesion in amongst people. What is like,
Fight them like Gandhi.
yeah, really, we'll work together, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but so that just also reminded me of what Sadhguru said to you when you met Sadhguru.
Yep.
Can you explain that to our listeners?
Yeah. So I had this opportunity to talk with him on stage in front of an audience.
Wow, that must have been something.
That was
Nerve-wracking.
So the way I opened the conversation was, why is it that virtually every spiritual tradition says that you will eventually, by doing meditation or the other practices, you will gain the siddhis, but you shouldn't pay any attention to it. You shouldn't dwell on these things at all. And why is that? I would think it would be quite interesting if somebody gained a particular siddhi, that they would want to be curious about it at least. But the instructions always are, don't pay any attention. Why is that? And the short answer, he said this in many different ways, but the short answer was, as a species, we are not sufficiently developed to be able to handle that kind of power, essentially, in a responsible way. And so I said, I'm a scientist. I spend my career trying to figure out things like, well, what is telepathy and why does it work? And what does it tell us about the nature of the world and all of that? And he was basically saying that's not a good thing, because people will abuse it, similar to what you had just said. That, yeah, people whose ego isn't in check and are attracted or seduced by the power, that will be bad. And so, yeah, I get that. My response, which I didn't think of at the time, but I have afterwards, and I've written an article on this. The reason why it is better to know than not to know is because somebody will have an experience like telepathy or some kind of psychic thing. They will want to know how to understand that. And so, depending on who they are and what their context is, if they're working with the guru will tell them, don't pay any attention to this, which they're going to ignore because they're still going to be curious about it. So they're going to go somewhere else, and they're going to talk to a religious person who say, well, it's demonic.
Yeah.
It's bad. Like, this is a bad thing. So the reason why you shouldn't pay attention to it is because it's like trying to suck you into some kind of evil world. Well, that's going to freak them out because they weren't asking for demons. They were just had an experience. Or they'll go to somebody from a different religion will say, oh, it's angelic. So you're the next Messiah now. Or they'll go to a scientist who will say, oh, that's delusional because that doesn't exist. So they're denying their experience. Or they'll go to a psychiatrist and say, take this medication because that's delusional.
Yeah, sure.
So you're going to all these people now who are telling you to be afraid, to not talk about it, to take, all of those answers are not very useful. So I would then claim that if we actually do science on these things and we figure out, oh, by the way, this is just an aspect of consciousness that everyone has. It's part of the fact of being a biological system who has consciousness. And so what does it mean for an individual who has a psychic experience? So it might not mean anything other than it's simply a form of perception that says that we're somehow connected through space and time. So it's not demonic, it's not angelic, it's not like any of that. It's simply a natural fact of being alive.
Yeah.
So I would think then that would be useful. Right? They would be even be useful for a guru who is cautioning people to not dwell on these things by just being able to say, oh, it's simply part of the fact of being alive.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly going to help if you're about to cross the road and then your intuition tells you, wait, there's a problem. And then you stop and a bus flies past you. I mean, that's like, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
How handy is that?
Yeah.
Or like, don't take this job, take this job because this is going to like help you so much better and you're going to be happier and you're going to make so much more money or whatever. It's like, don't get involved with this person because it's like going to ruin your life.
Right. So just imagine then that you have those experiences frequently and somebody's saying that's demonic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
like that's something to be frightened about. Well, then you'll stop paying attention to it and the bus will hit you.
Yeah, exactly. So another thing I want to ask you is that through all your research, have you found over the years like people are getting more of these abilities? Is it ramping up? I mean, all the stuff online saying like, we come into a new phase in consciousness and what, but I never knew what to believe. But just from your research, have you noticed a change or has it just been the same the whole time?
No, the change is that unlike previous decades, the idea that studying consciousness in all of its aspects is now acceptable in the academic world. That is a very major change. That change is accelerating. And so the number of conferences, number of places I'm asked to talk to, and the people I'm asked to speak to have very dramatically increased. I would say probably over the past 10 years, it's become very noticeable. But now I get invitations to speak at least once a week. And there are conferences once a week. I mean, it's everywhere. And more importantly, that the range of what you can talk about for consciousness studies now is beginning to include the anomalies, the whole range, psychic, mystical experience, whatever. So that is new. I don't think the phenomena themselves have changed because it's culture bound. Like in the Western world, meaning sort of Europe plus Australia, maybe South Africa, and the US, it has been a very strong taboo. Don't talk about this stuff because it's like witchcraft or something. That is beginning to change. But if you go to India or most places in Asia, it's like no big deal. Well, of course these things happen because the Eastern philosophy has a different take on it. Same is true in Russia and other places in the world. So the nature of the taboo and what you can talk about and where you can speak about these things depends a lot on what culture you're in. So the big change that I see is Western culture, so-called, is changing quickly.
Okay.
And catching up.
So, Dean, sorry, there was two more questions that I wanted to ask, but
will we finish at the bottom of the hour? Because then.
Okay, sorry. Okay, then I'll just ask this last question to wrap it up.
Yeah.
So, what do you think if there was like one major event? What would you think that would change everyone's perception of this phenomenon? Like get everyone on board, like the whole world?
Nothing. Nothing would do it. No single event. Because given the way that the world works now, where people mostly get media through social media, I mean, sometimes newspapers, sometimes TV and so on, but there is so much AI slop out there with deep fakes that are impossible to tell if this is real or not, that even if a UFO landed at the White House and an alien got out and gave a speech, I would say most people wouldn't believe any of it. Even if it was true, they still wouldn't believe it.
I know. I was about to say, like, if disclosure happened, that would probably, and we actually saw some.
Like the movie Disclosure Day. Have you seen that movie yet?
Yes, I did see it, yeah.
Right. So it's very disappointing because they get to the end where something's going to happen and nothing happens. Like the movie stops.
I know. You want to see what happened to the world afterwards. Yeah,
Yeah, like
exactly.
that's and then the other part is that they were showing that everybody's like wrapped with attention on their phones because they're getting this live streaming. No way
Mm,
in the world that's going to happen. Absolutely
yeah.
not.
Yeah.
So one of the criticisms of the movie is that Spielberg is 80 years old and he's thinking of a movie that would have worked in the 1960s.
Yeah,
It will
sure.
not work today because
Yeah.
people don't know what to trust when they're looking at something, or
I,
they're interested in entertainment, or they're concerned about how do they pay the rent, and they could care less about aliens. So the same thing is then true with some psychic doing some amazing thing like levitating. Well, I could see a dozen YouTubes with people levitating, but they're all tricks. So,
yeah. I,
not that's why I'm saying there would be nothing that would change this instantly everywhere. That will not happen.
I know that's why I always feel so sorry for the coming of Jesus. If Jesus came back again, like no one would take him seriously because he would be on TikTok showing like how he's healing this person, doing this thing, and everybody would just like laugh at it and be like, no, well, so that he
Yeah.
would be just wandering around like miserable, like because no one's believing him. I think I should make
Well,
a movie
so
about that.
the cartoon I like about this very issue is the aliens land on the Earth, and people are talking to them, and the alien mentions that what do you think about Jesus? And of course, the human is thinking, you know about Jesus too? Oh yeah, Jesus comes and visits us on some planet somewhere 2 or 3 times a year, and we have a big celebration. What did you do when Jesus came on your planet?
We
We
killed
killed
them.
him.
No, exactly. I mean,
Oh,
it's like, I'm just laughing at the joke. I'm laughing at the
yeah. So
joke. But yeah, no,
humanity
it'd be
is,
terrible.
yeah, we're
We've
still
killed
in a
every
rough,
single person that said live in harmony and love each other. We've killed them all. I mean, even John Lennon,
yeah,
Gandhi, Jesus, you name it.
yeah,
Everyone that said let's just get along and love each other, dead. But
yeah.
what
We're
that
in
was,
our rough adolescent phase. That's the way I see it.
yeah, that's why we can't have these powers because the telepathy. But when they took the Tower of Babel down or whatever, and they made us all talk different languages. Like they knew we cannot have telepathy at our consciousness level now because I mean, we've got instant messages on our phones and on social media, and all we use it is for just to damage each other and hate each other and tell each other how, just hate things spewed around. And it sounds, I feel like the aliens actually was trying to test us. They're like, okay, well, let's give them this instant messaging thing, like the WhatsApp or text message to see how they do. Because if they suddenly get telepathy, it's going to be mayhem because we can't even responsibly use this technology because it's so instantaneous. We can't actually just sit, calm down, just take a minute and answer like a little bit later when we feel better. We'll just answer right then, and it's always damaging. Now with telepathy, we'll be stuffed.
If telepathy were widespread and reasonably accurate, that would change everything. Like if a switch were turned and there was suddenly massive telepathy everywhere in the world, and there's a TV show on this now, Pluribus. Have you watched this show, Pluribus?
And I haven't, no.
Yeah, so I
Okay.
forget where it is, maybe Netflix or something. But the idea there is that everyone in the world very quickly does become fully telepathic. And that's the story then
Wow.
of, well, what would have happened in the world? The people, everyone in the world, with the exception of something like 11 people, are now part of a giant hive mind. And everything suddenly becomes extremely good. It's like everyone has
Wow.
everyone else's expertise. Nobody's hungry. There's no more war. It's like utopia. But the 11 people who are not influenced or they're not changed, they think it's horrific
Yeah.
because they don't want to get absorbed by the rest of the people. And this is a repeating theme in science fiction. So the reason why it's perceived as horrific is because it would involve a change to the nature of the way that civilization works now, because you no longer need a justice system and you can't lie
Mm.
in business. And I mean, criminality would disappear overnight. The whole structure of society worldwide would change, I think, in a positive direction.
I think so.
But many people are
Yeah.
frightened
No,
of that.
Oh, okay. Well, I got a bit of homework to do. I got to go watch this TV series.
Yeah, it's quite good. So I think they're
Nice.
working on season 2 now.
Okay, cool.
But as a way of portraying this very issue, I think it's quite good because it does show everything will change very quickly. And from my perspective, I would be part of that hive mind in a minute. That everyone in that is happy and fulfilled. And
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
why would you want to do that?
But it's
Yeah,
like you
sure.
actually said, it's like you said in your interview with regards to that. Anybody at any time can be anything. So I mean, if you need to fix your car, you open up the thing and the mind would just come and say, okay, it's this, and
Yeah.
that. If you need to do a heart transplant or whatever, it's this, and that. My only issue, and I know you were saying this, but this is a very different scenario, and this is, as we can end off on this here. The Borg, I know they introduced the Borg on Star Trek, but that's a slightly different, although they're half mind, they're half mechanical. So the machine operates with them. So that's a very different concept to us as we are now being a half mind, because I think that would work very, very well, exactly as you said. Running with a machine, I don't know. That might be something different. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, the concept of the Borg was that you are part of the collective, but there's one creature in charge of the entire thing. That's a very, very different idea. That's actually not a hive mind. That's your mind's being infected so that
Yes.
you must follow the leader. A hive mind is a single global mind, which is quite a different idea.
But it's kind of like the internet, but it's like outside of us. But it's like a very
No, but the
primitive.
internet-
Internet's a very primitive form of like what the hive mind. I mean, like a very
Right. And it reflects the same rough adolescence as us, right? So it's a mirror of us, and that's why a lot of it is utter nonsense and destructive. So,
exactly.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, Dean. Well, what a pleasure.
Thank you.
And thank you
Yeah.
so much. What an honor. What a pleasure. And it was extremely interesting as always. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope those fires stay away from you, man.
Yeah. Good luck with the fires, man.
Yeah, so far the fires are not that close, but the smoke is relentless. So that's not so good.
Okay. Well, yeah,
Sure, man.
Dean, thank you very much, man. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and yeah, wish you the best. Hopefully Elon gets hold of you and donate some bucks.
Yeah. And if you need any experimenters with the nose inhaler, send me one.
Yeah, everyone I talk to about it is saying, "Can I try it now?"
Yeah.
Not quite yet.
Not
Soon
yet.
we will.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay. Cheers.
Thanks,
Dean.
Dean.
Thanks, man.
Fantastic, man. It was very cool.
Yeah, that was awesome, man.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna read that book, man. It's
Yeah.
like, from the little bit that you were telling me about it, and from a little bit of the stuff that I was hearing on certain podcasts, it sounds like it's a very, very interesting book. My thing is, when I read a book, there must be some sort of technique involved.
Oh yeah, geez, sorry, we actually didn't even get to that in his book. He's got so many techniques in the book.
That's fine. That's what I want to know. So if it's in the book, I'm keen to read it, because that's exactly.
A lot of
I love protecting. I love training with these things.
Yes, so he's got.
That's cool.
I shouldn't even ask that. He's got like how to make sigils, how to make other manifestation techniques.
Nice.
He's got like all sorts of cool stuff in there that you can work with.
All right.
As I said, I did the horse one, and there you go. I saw the bloody horse like on the billboard.
I'll test it out. And then obviously you and I, we're gonna one of these days we're going to be testing the theory that he was. Yeah, we're going to be doing that sometime soon. That'll be on a podcast sometime soon, guys. So watch out for that one. But otherwise, everybody, thank you for listening this week. As per usual, please like and subscribe and share. And we'll
share.
chat
And leave
to you
a comment.
guys.
What do you guys
leave
think?
a comment.
Have you had any great synchronicities? Tell us about it.
Come, Sarah, tell us your synchronicities, and Tracy.
Yeah. Yeah, Sarah, tell us.
And anyway, cool.
Thanks, Sarah, for the support.
Yeah. And Tracy and all of our subscribers. Thanks, guys. Much appreciated for everything. And then we'll chat to you, everybody, next week. Thanks, man. Thanks, Will.
Cheers, guys.